Hi guys, it's Coffee here, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm not sat at my desk like normal, I'm out on a walk. We've got some lovely weather here again today, and we had some awesome weather over the weekend. And over the weekend is what I want to talk about. So I, for the first time, shot some Fuji Acros film. It's quite an expensive film by Fuji, especially for black and white. Here in the UK, it's about £13 a roll, so it's far from cheap, and it's actually one of the more expensive black and white films that aren't a limited edition. But having just bought a Fuji X100V, I thought it'd be a little bit of fun to try out the Acros film against the Fuji emulation built into the X100V. The plan is to make a little bit of a mini series, so I've also bought some Provia and some Velvia, and that'll be coming to the channel over the next few weeks, so if you're interested in this video, please don't forget to subscribe, as there's plenty more coming. But the weekend we had absolutely lovely weather, and let's get talking about that now. We actually took a trip to the local village of Aldermaston. It's really close to me and has the Kennet and Avon Canal running through it, which meant we had lots of good things to photograph. The sun was starting to come down, so we had some really nice tones, and there was no wind, so it meant we could get some reflections off of the water of the canal too. It was so nice out, perfect for shooting a 100 ISO film. Camera setting wise, with the Fuji X100V, I was using the standard Acros emulation with all of the default settings. From a grain point of view, I went with weak and low, as Fuji Acros is known as having one of the finest black and white film grains that you can get, and I also shot the camera wherever possible at 100 ISO to match the film that I was shooting. And then from a film point of view, I was using the Leica M6 with my 28mm Voigtlander. I shot the film at ISO 50 so that I was always swaying towards over rather than underexposure, as everything I'd read online suggested this film works best when you give it too much rather than not enough light. From a developing point of view, I developed it myself using HC110. It was dilution B for 5.5 minutes. The negatives came out looking really good, so I'd probably use the same development times again if I was to repeat this test. In shooting two different focal lengths, you can probably tell this isn't a scientific review. I was just using the two cameras on my day out, thought it'd be nice to compare them, and it's more to get a feel rather than to be pixel peeping and comparing them as precisely as possible. I almost felt bad on the trip shooting black and white film. You can see that the colours are so nice out. You do get that sort of tone come through in the black and white, but it's definitely not the same. Thankfully, I was shooting the X100V in JPEG and RAW, so I do have some RAW images, and here are some of those now. In terms of comparison, what do I think? So I think generally the digital files are actually quite blown out. An awful lot of them, the highlights clip. And in the digital files, you can see how much more detail and sharpness there is to the images. And I don't say this as a positive or a negative for either one. Both of them have their pros and cons. Like the softer images from film sometimes lead to nicer portraits, whereas that sharp detail can be so good for landscapes when shooting digital. Now, one of the areas where I think the film does really well, and it's quite hard to explain, is how the highlights and shadows kind of gradually fall into each other. Like the roll off of both shadows and highlights seems to be much better, and it almost feels kind of creamy, whereas some of the digital shots have quite hard edges where the light goes from very bright highlight to dark shadow. There's a few images, some near where they park the barges, where this effect is quite prominent. It's quite hard to describe, but here are some of those images now, and let me know if you can see what I mean. As the afternoon wore on and the sun began to set, it actually became very hard to shoot with the Acros 100 film, as shooting at 100 ISO is really quite limiting. I was, however, able to continue shooting with the X100V. So with about 12 frames still to shoot, the following day I headed out to the local village of Kingsclear and shot some more sort of architectural shots of the high street. Now some of these images, both film and digital, I think came out really well. I was so lucky to have such good light again, and I think the images really benefited from it. Overall, I'm actually really impressed with how good the Fuji emulations are. It's no small feat to try and get digital to match film, and I think Fuji have done a really good job. Some of these images look really similar. To make the Fuji emulation a little bit closer to the film, I think what I would do is probably drop the highlights slightly so that it didn't blow out the images so often. And I'd also reduce how much JPEG sharpening there is, as the images from the digital files are just too sharp and then therefore don't look like film. They're always going to be slightly different and they're always going to have their slightly unique looks, but I think, like I said, it's a really, really good job by Fuji. How do I feel about Fuji Acros against other black and white films? Well, personally, I really loved it. I quite like low grain films, and this definitely delivers on that. It's an awful lot like Ilford HP5, but it is an awful lot more expensive. I think I'll probably pick up more of this film in the future. Is it worth the price? I'm really not sure though. But at the same time, I feel like we need to keep buying these Fuji films or they're going to keep on discontinuing them. So there it is. Let me know what you guys think. How did the film and digital compare? And have you ever shot Acros before, and how did you get on with it? And do you think it's worth the extra cost over something like Ilford FP4? If you've enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like and subscribe. Like I said earlier, we've got more coming to this channel, especially in terms of Velvia and Provia in a format very similar to this. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!